His wife was Juno. And that movie really threw me off, because now I just imagine Jupiter as Michael Cera.
And that is upsetting.
Very upsetting. If the Romans knew that that was what we would associate Juno with, I think they'd be very upset. They have a lot more to be upset about. Let's go ahead and see what they're pulling out. This is just going to be a scouting Sombra. They know that they're coming up against a 3-3. It's going to specifically be a Winston, so they do want to stick with the Reinhardt.
And there's 3 maps in a row now where we have basically only seen the 3-3 goats from both sides. It's going to be the Ryan version versus the Winston version of the defense. We do oftentimes see this Winston version on that defense. And Jupiter already making that long rotation, but we need to see Bump It Up, or rather Rod Tongue, get in position to be able to intercept. And it's going to be the space rotation from Jupiter as well.
Ah, I do love that. Slow gravity, slow moving, it's very serene, very calm.
Oh,
but then
the
they're
stun!
right back into the thick of it. It's no longer calm, and Rod Tongue's already dead. It's this nice little bit of dissonance, and that's really quick pick as well. Jupiter already 6 versus 5. I don't know that Giant Lynx can really answer.
Anakin's timing was so pristine, just as Rod Tongue was going for that jump straight out of mid-air, about 1 foot off the ground. The stun from Anakin comes through, and Jupiter cleaned that one up. Giant Lynx know they're down 1. They have to wait for the respawn as they get in just at the 99% mark.
And it's already Saiyajin God muscled right off. Nearly lost that mech, just barely preserved it. Nice counter kill to get Summer Rider traded back, but Claire's in trouble. And Giant Lynx might have barely just salvaged this. 99.6%, would you believe it? And it's just enough to get that respawn of Rod Tongue, get back on the point. And they've actually charged up a ton of ultimate.
And the margins are so close as well. Look at that, like you mentioned, it's 0.4% to get on and be able to contest on the defense. And part of the reason why the ultimates are still quite comparable is because of the fact that Jupiter got that percentage while only getting 1 kill. Rod Tongue was the only one that went down. Giant Lynx then came through, fully regrouped, 6-man unit, winning that fight, pushing Jupiter back and getting a lot more kills than Jupiter actually got originally.
Now Giant Lynx, they've kind of weathered that storm, might be feeling a bit better, and that was really good initiative of them to actually get back on that point and do so in a way that really disrupted Jupiter's game plan. Same rotation.
You got to be careful here, because if Rod Tongue was waiting, he might have been able to use a Primal Rage, as we've seen in the Overwatch League, but Jupiter are going to be able to get a free rotation nearly onto the point here. Giant Lynx, so they need to be playing proactively, because they are about to sit on 6 full ultimates.
They have an advantage, and they do need to, like you said, take the initiative, press that advantage. Self-destruct land forward by Ryu, counter 1 back out on the other side of that. And it's unfortunately Rod Tongue being the first casualty. Now Giant Lynx still a little bit more to go on. Claire, sound barrier gets it and immediately commits it. This is where Jupiter just had that slight numbers advantage. Hopefully they can just see that through to its logical conclusion. But Giant Lynx, they're not going to let it go for free. Bomber up, finally picked off Saiyajin God as well. The rest of the team will either die or retreat here, but the point will go the way of Jupiter.
And that's so upsetting for Giant Lynx as well, because they had 6 full ultimates to play with. Rod Tongue's already swapped onto the Reinhardt now, and part of the issue with running the Winston, once ultimates are in play, it's not just the Earth Shatter coming out from Samurai D, but also Ryu with the self-destruct can't be logged out.
This is already Jupiter, nearly getting a 3rd. Good enough response from Giant Lynx to get on the point, take the fight. Samurai coming up on a Shadow. Rocket's already picked. Rod Tongue's made a swap on the Winston here as well.
Big snowball.
Big. That's going to be a lot of easy cleanup kills here. Charge in, unfortunately, gets nothing, but it doesn't matter. Giant Lynx were unable to maintain presence on the point, and that is a really quick snowball from Jupiter. Not the sort you'd usually expect. They didn't actually have ultimates going into that. They charged them up during that fight.
Now, this is exactly what happened on Blizzard World, where you're expecting Giant Lynx to be able to win these fights, and even if they are going to lose them, it shouldn't be one-sided. Jupiter should not be able to win in the manner that they currently are. Giant Lynx should be trading back effectively. They have 6 ultimates to play with, very important, very impactful ones as well. It shouldn't be the case that Jupiter get basically a clean team wipe, charge up a bunch of ultimates, go straight onto B, and then able to execute and snowball so effectively that Giant Lynx are just unable to stop that amount of pressure.
And it's tough, really. I mean, Giant Lynx, again, a couple of times found themselves in what you'd consider to be relatively winnable scenarios. Not like easy win scenarios, don't get me wrong. Like, even with those ultimates, it is still sometimes tough to hold on to that first point, you know, especially if someone ends up getting picked. But on the whole, it does feel like Giant Lynx continue to be a few animals short of a zoo here.
That's one small step for man, but one giant on the back foot for Giant Lynx, I guess. Because this is basically a incredibly difficult position to already...
Mankind.
Giant Lynx for Mankind. But on the back foot. They went backwards. I don't know. They stepped back on the ship because, I mean, it's a 4:33 time bank for Jupiter. And this is now a case where Giant Lynx at minimum would need to snowball onto B to even have a comparable time bank. And that's if they can comfortably get A, which the way they've been playing, the way this entire series has been going is seemingly quite unlikely now.
Yeah, Lynx steps back onto Noah's Ark because the Animals are not going 2x2. Both teams still running the 3-3. 3 tanks, 3 supports, also known as an animalistic name, GOATs. Just trying to wrap that one all up nice and neatly. This is going to be Jupiter on the defense, Samurai.
It's the opposite of what we saw, because it's this time Jupiter running the Winston version, Giant Lynx are running the Ryan version, a lot of what we see on this map, and Jupiter defending the way we expect with the Winston as well, getting a lot of early ult charge, 55% and counting.
And that's really what you need. You want to get that primal rage nice and early, long before Rod Tongue is able to charge up his ultimate on the Reinhardt, because eventually it will just muscle you out. Jupiter, they know what the game plan is here and have so far executed adequately.
The timing's important here. You saw a lot of early damage on Bella, which slows down Lynx a lot. They're on the point now, though, and Jupiter need to be able to defend, but they don't quite have the ults just yet.
Samurai goes in, lays out a bit more damage and comes a bit closer. Eats a stun and is fine for now. And they're so close, a real hair's breadth. Oh, Anakin early pick. Samurai is still not quite at that primal rage. Finally has it now, and they're fighting at a numbers disadvantage. That's an early transcendence from Sabagon as well, and it's not enough to save Claire. Meanwhile, on the other side of that, Pannies has held on to his. Actually charged it before Sabagon. That's a pretty ideal fight for Giant Lynx. Really cool, calm, collected, and not using a single ultimate.
Step 1 committed, step 1 complete for Giant Lynx as well. Like you mentioned, no ultimates there being used, which means they still have 5 coming up online. They did have the rally in there, though, so that rally armor is still into effect. Yep. That's number 6 that they technically do have walking into the second point.
And they have a real opportunity to snowball. Grab gets eaten. That's so huge. It gets even better now for Giant Lynx, who actually have more time on the clock than what Jupiter did walking in. What? 3 apiece for the Divas. That changes everything. Suddenly, Rod Tongue with that Earth Shatter not available anymore. Jupiter had the closer respawn, but they did lose Sabagon. And this is nearly capped. They had to keep pressure on the point here, Jupiter. Samurai goes down. The few members of Giant Lynx are just drilling down the members as they come on one by one with the Orb of Discord, the stuns, the damage from the Diva, and Rod Tongue rejoins. He's already thrown out a Shatter. They finish off Anakin. They find Ryu's smack, and now they're keeping the pressure on Jupiter. It looks like Giant Lynx are going to cinch this in an even quicker time, unless a miracle comes to pass for Jupiter.
Jupiter don't have the ultimates to play with, and Giant Lynx do. Sound Barrier being used, Transcendence used as well. Jupiter needs to find something. It's back onto Kimahororo. He needs to save his team right now. He needs to get the grab.
He got Bumbarapa, and that does nearly getting up to that ultimate. Rod Tongue is well down, and it looks like the miracle has arrived in the form of Ken Mahororo, who will also finish off Bello for good measure. Has the grab available now, and Giant Lynx a hair's breadth from it, but not quite getting it over the line.
You can see why he's starting for the team right now. He's been such a miracle worker here. He's been the clutch player of Jupiter now across 3 maps in a row, able to get that ultimate charge in there, able to get the damage in, and Graviton Surge now available. Jupiter in position to continue defending. They're not quite out of the fire just yet. Giant Lynx could still get a good time here.
Oh, that's so huge. Early grab. They realized Sergeant God wasn't actually back in the mech yet. Unfortunately, they get no kills. They do get a Transcendence out of Pannies. Sergeant God's back in the mech, and Jupiter don't have much to go on here.
It's a 1-for-1 trade so far. Still looking at Samurai D with the Earth Shatter. This could be the next play that really saves Jupiter, because otherwise Giant Lynx coming up to some big ultimates, and we need to see them execute better than they have before.
The Shatters have been on balance pretty good. Rod Tongue's coming up to one of his own now, moving forward. There it is, thrown out, gets nothing. Blocked actually by Bello's shield. Now Rod Tongue has his own Shatter available, waiting for the ideal opportunity. There it is, round the side. Able to get one on the back. Finds Samurai, doesn't get the kill, but they've eaten Bombarapa's grab. That's very huge for Jupiter, who are now trying to just hold on. Hopefully pick a member off, stun on Bombarapa. They don't quite finish him off. But Lynx have chosen to flag a retreat. Now they lose some members as Jupiter see the retreat and press forward.
And that window slowly closes as well. Opportunities now receding for Giant Lynx. They have the chance to get that double cap. They had the chance to snowball to be a 5-minute time bank versus the 4:33 of Jupiter. Now Giant Lynx would be happy to get any cap. Giant Lynx would be happy to just get to the time bank because they are behind. They don't have ultimates. Jupiter, they do.
And for how close they got, 98.3 at the end of the day, unless they get this final third, that is going to count for now. Giant LYNX desperately needing some ultimates, nearly up on a grab here, nearly up on a sound barrier and Transcendence too, but Jupiter have more in the pocket.
And the game back in the hands of Aurora, waiting for that grab, looking for the angles while Samurai with Earth Shatter doesn't hit.
Yeah, they layer on the self-destruct into the grab though. Bit of an awkward angle, but it's enough to find Rod Tongue and Bombarapa nicely layered in with the crowd control, ensure those two die. And they got Panty's Transcendence for good measure. That being said, Giant LYNX will actually come into the next fight with an ultimate advantage once again.
And we're back in the same scenario. We've seen Giant LYNX add ultimate advantages. We've seen them ahead in the game with economically, macro-wise, they should be the team on paper to be able to take these fights. But I do now wonder, can they make it done? Can they get it done where they have not before? Because for Jupiter, when they've been in the scenario before, they've been able to find the kills. They've been able to absorb the ultimates. Samurai, with his own Earth Shatter, has been nullifying Giant LYNX on multiple occasions.
That's all it's really going to take. Ooh, only gets the one, and it's not one they can follow up on. The Fire Strike does not connect onto Panties. Now Jupiter, a little bit lean as Giant LYNX establish themselves on the point. Unfortunately, Rod Tongue's own Shadow not getting much. Grab down, largely counted out by Savagod's Transcendence, able to save Samurai even as he got charged away, but they're keeping the pressure on the tanks. There's the counter grab from Hororo. They find Bombarapa, but they did lose a tank of their own. Sergeant God, though, loses the mech, getting drilled down. Rod Tongue gets stunned, and that's enough to get him low enough to finish off. And again, Jupiter weather the storm. No matter how many ultimates LYNX seem to be able to bring to bear, they're never quite getting that final third done.
And you can imagine the kind of damage output that Hororo is doing right now. He's got high ult charge, he's got high energy charge as well. His Graviton surges have been better. And for Jupiter, despite the fact that Samurai D with the Shatter there, basically Giant LYNX and responded with their own with Shatter, both teams had a Graviton surge, but Jupiter still come out ahead. Jupiter are doing so much more damage, and they're getting so much more done. Giant LYNX make a big commit, but don't get the results.
And strictly speaking, once again, Giant LYNX come in with a big ultimate advantage, but we're now entering 1 minute territory. If they can't get it over the line here, they'll come into the next one without an ultimate advantage, and they'll struggle to win it. They really need to make this one count. Ryu, nothing with the self-destruct. Now Giant LYNX can just dig into the deep pockets, but they lose Bombarapa again, and now Bellows down. And before any of those huge ultimates have been committed, Giant LYNX are already dead and bleeding from the mouth. Jupiter, once again, have charged up more of their own.
And that is not a free fight for Giant LYNX as well. You can see there only 2 ultimates remaining. Jupiter now in prime position to complete the hold here, nearly 30 seconds. We're at the sort of stage where this will be the final opportunity for Giant LYNX. They've had multiple opportunities, 5, 6 pushes. They started out with so much time, and now all that time has all but disappeared.
Hororo is so threatening right now. Huge amount of damage, huge amount of charge, and always having great uptime on those ultimates.
Hasn't died for 3 or 4 fights in a row as well, so you know he's just been maintaining that high energy for this entire time. It's a big now rotation from Giant LYNX, and they need to start to find these opportunities and keep an eye on Ken. Shut him down.
Oh, straight into the barrier, and now the counter Shatter on the backside. Doesn't actually get much out of Samurai. Giant LYNX, they've only got 1 ultimate to go off here, and it's not a super high impact one. Grab, thrown in. Nothing to layer in with it just yet. Panties commits a Transcendence. Bombarapa sorely needs this grab. Savagod's already committed a Transcendence, so now they can throw it out. Oh, but it's a bit too early.
Player's got ult.
Oh, nice placement, and long lucky last. They find 1, Saiyajin God actually finding 2, and then a third out of Rod Tongue, and it has finally tipped the balance. Ryu does get the D-Mech on Saiyajin God, but that is all they'll really get in response here. Finally, LYNX have cracked it open once again for what was nearly a huge snowball push that would have ended them out with more time bank. They end up capping in overtime. At least it gets done, and they still have a chance to bring it to a draw.
You have a situation there as well towards the end because they already had the 2 ticks. They only needed that final one. You do also have to consider if they were starting at 0, if they were starting at 0%, could they have capped it out? Might not have been the case, but looking at Jupiter as well, for one of the few times on this defense, the ultimates just didn't quite line up. Yes, the Graviton Surge was there, but it was counted out by Panties on the Transcendence. Ryu didn't get the self-destruct until a little bit later. You also have a case where you don't have this massive play in terms of Ultimate's getting huge value. Claire had to use the sound barrier probably a little bit earlier than he would have liked. Then the self-destruct coming through from Sage and God picks up 2 to 3 members. If the sound barrier was maybe delayed by a couple of seconds, it might have saved some more members of Jupiter. So slight timings there, not really working out for Jupiter, one of the rare occasions that we've seen so far in the series.
And without being too critical of a team that did ultimately win that fight and cap the point, there was also a really neat window. Sabagod's Transcendence came out a little earlier than Bumbarapa had his grab available. But Bumbarapa threw out his grab the second he had it up. If it actually held off for a moment more, then Sabagod's Transcendence would have fully run out at least partway through the grab. Instead, because of the timing in which he threw it out, Sabagod's Transcendence was still actually up for almost all of the duration of the grab. Also worth noting, best result here for Giant LYNX is a draw, which is still a functional series loss.
Yeah, so that's the unfortunate thing that Giant do have to contend with now for Jupiter. Opportunity to pick up more points. Map points count here in terms of tiebreakers, and we've seen Jupiter clean up this A point in pretty decisive fashion before. 4 minutes and 33 was their time bank and the time that they have to play with. And for Giant LYNX, seeing if they can find opportunity to be able to defend properly, Rodtongue already taking a lot of early damage.
Yeah, and again with the Winston, you need to get the early damage, get the ult charge up, and actually Samuraida has, I mean, just barely led Rodtongue. Finally, Rodtongue pulls ahead, but it's dangerous. He's not got enough of a lead for it to matter much.
And already Jupiter on the point, just pressuring that objective, forcing Giant LYNX to meet them. Giant can't stall this game out. They have to fight now. And Jupiter, that's what they want to do.
As the thing, Jupiter are just going to play to the map objective, wrap around. Sabagod gets a headshot on Rodtongue, and it looks like it's already over, but the crying for Giant LYNX. Now Bello gets dropped by his counterpart. Sajid God demechs and dead, and suddenly it all falls apart. Sabagod Transcendence for style points on the point as they finish off those last few kills. Rocket not quite going to be able to touch. That is a 3-0 so far for Jupiter. That's going to be a guaranteed series win. Now it's just for all the marbles.
You can see in that time bank scenario as well, Jupiter's so good at punishing Winston Place, shutting out Rodtongue, preventing him from doing anything. A stark contrast to what Samurai D was able to do with his own Winston, getting a lot of early ult charge. It's just something Rodtongue wasn't able to achieve. You'd like to think for Giant LYNX, probably would have been better for them to continue playing the Rhine 3-3 goats instead. But that is all just going to be in the past now. It's already been 3 maps done and dusted in the favor of Jupiter. The best that Giant LYNX can do now is get one back on Watchpoint Gibraltar.
And it does just feel like Giant LYNX have chronically fallen just short one way or another. It feels like there have been opportunities that haven't quite come through for them. For how good things have looked, when it's mattered the most, they've unfortunately fallen short of the mark. And it feels like a very slight thing. It feels like with just a little bit of adjustment, this team would be looking seriously powerful. They would really be going toe-to-toe with Jupiter in a much more significant sense in terms of the actual score line. But because they are lacking that little bit, it's allowed Jupiter to consistently edge them out.
And now going into that 4th and final map, it is going to be the Escort game mode. And to find a little bit more about how Escort works, let's take a look at this.
Gibraltar. This is Escort. 2 teams face off as either defenders or attackers. This is the payload. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to escort the payload along a set path containing 3 checkpoints. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby at the same time. To get moving again, attackers must clear away the defenders by force. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. If even one attacker is near the payload when the clock runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared off the payload or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
So there it is, final opportunity now for Giant LYNX to get one back on the board. And this is where we need to start to see, and I feel like we said this map earlier where we absolutely need to start seeing them come back around. This time it is very much at the risk of not getting a single map in the series, which would be a very bad start for them in this new season. So we had a few reservations about the Giant Lynx squad before even coming into this game. When we consider their past results, they've been a team that has consistently been relegated, and now potentially a team at risk of again being relegated if they cannot start picking up maps and wins.
And again, like, it does feel like they're close. It feels like they're genuinely a lot closer to being a really competitive team than either previous incarnation of these players, both being Giant and Lynx, obviously. But that's not enough in itself. Like, being closer is still not good enough when we consider the sheer caliber of teams in the pool this season. Like, they're already starting at a disadvantage, this Giant Lynx mashup roster. They need to kick it up far more than they already have, and that's why at least getting maps back here is so critical. They need to show us right here, right now, that they can take wins throughout the rest of this season.
And you need to see cleanliness of play, which is something I think we referred to before. And when you specifically look at Jupiter, which hasn't been 100% clean, but they've certainly been able to take advantage and execute where Giant Lynx have not been able to. And you see that a lot when Jupiter is a team that has been winning when they're supposed to win. They're also a team that has been winning when you think they're probably not supposed to win in these kind of fights, when Lynx are the ones way further ahead economically, and somehow Jupiter is still ahead.
Let's give credit where it's due, though. Jupiter are an incredibly powerful team. They are a very known quantity, themselves a finalist of just 2 seasons of Contenders ago, losing out to Talon, who themselves are in this pool. Hey, that's a matchup we'll be seeing in the next few weeks. But 3-0 up, can they make it the full Quinella?
Final chance to see if there's maybe some substitutions as well, and so far doesn't seem to be the case. Tyro is going to be sitting this entire format series out in for Jupiter. Hasn't cost him. In fact, it's been pretty successful with this specific 6-man lineup, defending first now. Opportunity to make this a short map if they can get a full hold.
Both teams running the 3-3 once again. Both teams running the Winston this time around. We have seen this before. So far, it has been Jupiter consistently edging out Giant.
And point A and point B of this map definitely favor the verticality, so having that extra leap is going to be important. Trading a bunch of damage at the beginning, but we just have to look out for who gets the earlier ult charge here. Panny's actually leading the pack so far.
Yeah, that's really something. We're also seeing Bumbarapa really keeping pace with Ken Mohororo. Aside from the Zenyatas, no one's really getting the benefit of this right now.
Just trading the energy charges when you see the bubbles being used, and suddenly Rod Tongue's gone.
That is a good trade back, though, finding Ken Mohororo. If Giant Lynx can survive now, they've got a closer respawn. Panny's is a bit closer to that Transcendence. Just jostling, looking to isolate Ryu. He's going to be fine.
This is giving Bumbarapa a lot of opportunity as well. While Ken Mohoro's been down, Bumbarapa's been charging up. You can see the space being taken. That's a DMAC.
And there comes Rod Tongue as well. Just as he rejoins the fray, they're able to continue having a numbers advantage here, Giant Lynx. This is going pretty well so far. Now finishing off Claire, only casualty being Bello, and of course Rod Tongue before that. Transcendence coming in for Savagod. Jupiter want to commit to this. They've got a Primal Rage as well, but already members stuck up in the grab. The Bumbarapa was able to charge while Ken Mohororo was dead. And off the back of that, they finish off those last few kills. Might have been a bit of an overzealous commitment there from Jupiter.
At the same time, though, they get ultimates out, so that's something that's important. They don't want Giant Lynx walking onto B with a huge ult bank. They don't want the Graviton Surge being used by Bumbarapa on B. They want to make sure it's gone on A. Even that means sacrificing Transcendence, because now Jupiter have the position, they have the opportunity to use their own ults, which they've been saving up.
Giant Lynx coming up on just a couple. Nearly a rally available for Bello. Going to use it now, but Bumbarapa is already the early casualty in the fight, and that is ideal for Jupiter without having to really expend any ultimates either. Suddenly, Giant Lynx grind to a halt.
Jupiter so good at finding these individual picks as well. Now on this defense, first big reset for Giant Lynx to sort of reapproach this positioning. Not a huge lot of progress so far, maybe about halfway through pushing B. Another lot of resources to play with as well, waiting to see what Ken Mohororo does with his first grab of this defense.
It tended to be pretty impactful over the rest of the series, so I would like to think it would be some of the same.
Support ultimates basically equal on both sides as well. Carter's still ever just slowly moving into position. The grab is coming through.
Yeah, big connect onto Bumbarapa, who gets low but doesn't quite go down. They instead get a 1-for-1, and you gotta say, finishing off Ryu, much higher impact. Rocket really coming in the nick of time here. Sabagod gonna have to commit to keep Samurai D alive. Now Giant Lynx still getting aggressive.
Not alive.
Able to finish him off anyway in spite of the Transcendence. And now Jupiter are the ones sorely scattered here. Largely thanks to Rod Tongue's Primal Rage on the back line. But credit to the rest of the team, and they're going to keep momentum going.
Speaking of Primal Rage, Samurai D dies with it. He doesn't use the ultimate. He doesn't keep himself alive. And Sabagod, the Transcendence, not enough to keep him alive either. So now the point definitely under contention. Now, Samurai D wastes no time.
Yeah, he's got the Primal Rage, and he's not going to make the same mistake twice. They get Rocket as well. Unfortunately, Panny's not quite quick enough to rescue him. Bumbarapa has himself a grab. They've chosen to commit it very late. Rod Tongue's already dead, and it feels like they were already in the back foot there. A 5 versus 6, then a 4 versus 6, and then the grab came out. Now Bumbarapa paying dearly for that, as Giant Lynx are going to get picked off and forced back.
And this time Jupiter with the correct counters at the correct times as well. The armor from Anakin still being stacked up. Claire with that sound barrier preventing deaths coming through from the self-destruct. Giant Lynx now getting ready to progress onto C, putting that Ryan onto the lineup now from Rod Tongue. A little bit of a stagger there on Sergeant God is going to slow things down somewhat. And Jupiter, though, are definitely defending towards the back of this point. Giant Lynx need one good push to get onto C.
Giant Lynx really got nothing to go on here, given that they chose to commit some of those ultimates in that last fight. Ultimates that didn't necessarily do much for them. Jupiter on the defense.
You can see them. Jupiter as well, trying to get an early aggressive fight here. They have the Graviton Surge. They want to make sure this fight does not get dragged on top of the cart. The Giant Lynx, they got other ideas.
Yeah, they throw themselves out a grab in the mid-rotation squad of Lynx. That's enough to isolate Panties. Now they finish Bellow, and this has worked. They've sown disarray into the side of Giant Lynx, getting them in that rotation, and it was nearly slick enough for Giant Lynx. Ever so nearly, but not nearly enough.
You can always tell Giant Lynx here, this was always going to be a bit of a lost fight. They were always going to use this one to just dry push, get some ultimate charge in there. The ultimate charge are going all in the favor of Jupiter. Off the back of 1 Graviton Surge, 4 ultimates now, nearly 5. And Giant Lynx just still lagging behind. This has been the lowest momentum we've seen so far on their offense. And it could be the kind of game-ending loss of momentum that prevents them from getting onto C.
This is really tough. They've still got a lot of ultimates on the side of Jupiter to chew through before they come back with an advantage. Good trade back on the Sabagod, but they lose Bellow anyway. And Giant Lynx are still at a disadvantage, having now committed a Transcendence. This has really got to pay off for them, because Jupiter, they can just cycle through their ultimates. They actually have now self-destruct being used from Ryu, getting nothing. And again, some trades here. Giant Lynx, nothing out of the self-destruct, and then they lose Panties. Just when they burn through the ultimates, they still don't actually get the picks. They still actually lose members, and will probably still have to take a retreat.
And Giant Lynx, they want to be able to stay into these fights, but they're losing members and losing time. Less than 1 minute, approaching that 30-second mark. They threw in a Transcendence there, and it's just prolonged the inevitable. Jupiter still win these fights, and Giant Lynx still just running away, trying to regroup, trying to find another opportunity to get the cart moving. And the cart has been slowly backing off.
It's such a gamble, isn't it, to use the Transcendence in that situation when you've lost the member. You're basically saying, we think we'll get enough kills to make this worthwhile, but if you keep getting traded out, it never becomes worthwhile. Speaking of trades, though, Ryu dead and as of yet unanswered. This could be the window for Giant Lynx, who are currently back in possession of the cart. Pick on Roro, a nice angle on that, but Sound Barrier keeps them safe for now. Shatter out from Rod Tongue. Not too impactful just yet. Samurai has a Primal Rage. No, he's not. He's dead. And Jupiter still losing members now. The grab from Bumbarapa did at least a little bit of work. They've only got Transcendence. Still need to finish off some more Jupiter members here.
And this has been a pretty poor fight for Jupiter so far, but they have close respawns. They still have ultimates to play with. Just need to wait for Samurai D to come back in.
There it is, the Transcendence to give them a second wind here, Giant Lynx, as Jupiter came into that re-engage. Already in a 4 versus 6 as Samurai decides to commit a Primal Rage. Rod Tongue had charged a second Earth Shatter in that time, and this one had the impact required. They finish off these last few members. Overtime it may be, but the point is capped and they buy themselves some more time.
And the points rescued there, 130 left to go. They still have the opportunity to continue pushing. Samurai D getting the close respawn, has to reset off the map. Likely now to come back is a Ryan. As coming back down to Carroll, what he can do with his Graviton Surge. It was used last time, but they couldn't quite clean up the kills. Giant Lynx had the correct ultimates, and this time executed correctly as well.
They've still got a slight ultimate advantage as well. Bumbarapa keeping pace with Ken Mahororo right now in the grabs. The only thing that Jupiter really have here is the Transcendence.
Jupiter need to get a lot of work done with these two ultimates. Bumbarapa eyes on his grab.
Very early commit from Bumbarapa and predictably reacted to by Sabagod. Self-destruct, doesn't find anything. It's a big combo from Giant without much gain. Now they don't have a defensive ultimate to steer them through the Graviton out of Ken Mahororo. The counter shatter, not enough to keep Jupiter at bay. That's a decent trade though, finding Sabagod and a mech for a mech. Samurai D goes down as well. Now Rod Tongue should be able to get aggressive with no enemy Reinhardt there. Samurai also died with an Earth Shatter. That is a very big impact ultimate gone.
Now this is where Giant Lynx have a lot of value in these momentum pushes. When they start snowballing the point across this cart, moving across the map, that's when they've had their best success. Still have ultimates in the back. Still Jupiter are finding their feet.
And Giant Lynx, they have the defensive tools to deal with this Earth Shatter if and when it comes out. Ken Mahororo's grab as well. They should be able to absorb it, but early D-Mech, they lose Bumbarapa! And suddenly it starts to look sour for Giant Lynx. They've already committed both of those defensive ultimates, and Jupiter haven't even used either the Shatter or the grab. Now the grab out, they look to finish the last few, and a sound barrier to keep Jupiter safe and tidy as they pick off these members of Giant Lynx, force them off the cart. This time the overtime does not work out favorably for Giant Lynx. A good amount of push though, a very tidy distance. Not quite the full cap, but definitely defendable.
When you start to think about where Giant Lynx were on that B point, how far they had gotten, where they were time-wise as well during the overtime, that's when they capped out. And then towards the next overtime, only 130 to play with on the C, and they still managed to get the cut a fair distance, 82.7 meters on the map. This is actually now a very defendable map position for Giant Lynx. Even if we get to see, this is somewhere where Giant Lynx can actually fully defend the map and get a map victory. Jupiter certainly do have their work cut out for them.
This is an interesting map so far. I would say that this is what we wanted to see out of Giant Lynx. They have continued to take it to Jupiter, continued to go toe-to-toe with them. Again, the stuff is there. They've clearly got the goods to go toe-to-toe with these high-caliber teams. What they need now is what they've lacked throughout the series so far, and that is to get it over the line, to actually complete the defense and pick up the map.
It's the defense, though, that does concern me about Giant, because when they have been on the attack, again, what they have found a lot of success in is the snowball pushes. When they start winning fights, and they're pushing forward onto the map, taking a lot of space, that's when they're getting a lot done. But when they're defending, it's not quite the same play, so it's not quite the same areas where they can win in. So, for Giant Lynx, how much can they hold on to? How much time can they burn off the clock? How often can they get themselves in positions where they should be winning? And unlike previous maps, can they start to win in those positions where they should be winning?
Out the gates, once again, both teams on the Winston variation of 3-tank-3 sports. Just love taps for now.
Giant just feeling out the space, wanting to see if they can defend forward. Back on the roof now, likely Jupiter's going to be able to get the cart underneath and force something on the other side. No kills so far, which is important because we have had a lot of damage come through. We have had a lot of early kills in a lot of maps.
This is all pretty stock standard so far. And no one really leading their counterpart in ult charge either. You can argue that Samurai D is now pulling ahead, but it's only by 5%. It's the commit coming out now. Sergeant God has started to pull ahead of Ryu.
This is opportunity for Giant Lynx. They saw the damage onto Samurai D. You also see now Jupiter just having to back off a little bit, rotating around the side now, see if they can find an opportunity.
Rod Tongue has to back off for just a fraction of a second. Samurai D took a fair chunk of damage here. Long rotation as well for Jupiter. If Giant Lynx can weather this one, then Jupiter in a really unfortunate spot.
It's the first minute gone, but the cart is moving and Panties is down.
Yeah, the leap failed for Rod Tongue as well. So this is a bit of a tight spot for Giant, who are actually having to attack onto the cart. Now they've just got to go 5 versus 6, be damned. Now a 4 versus 6 as they lose Bello. They haven't got any counter trades. Sergeant God down from Barapa gets stunned and picked off, and suddenly Giant Lynx, having honestly played pretty evenly, just kind of get rope-a-doped by Jupiter.
And that's the second time, we see Jupiter do these kind of moves all across Blizzard World. Also Horizon, bit of a spawn camp now as well. Bello, who died quite early, gets that forward spawn, doesn't get to regroup with his team, and this is where Jupiter can continue fighting picks. Haven't used a single ultimate yet, definitely leading now against Giant Lynx, where they're starting to run out of time and space.
Giant Lynx, they need to get onto this cart before too long. Just for now, jostling about inside the spaceship.
Rally would signal that Giant Lynx want to go, and Anakin responds. Here's that grab.
Lots to work with for Jupiter. The self-destruct layered in, and
Big
it's
one.
a big one. There is so little that can defend against it when you don't have that Reinhardt, especially if that Winston bubble's already been used. And that is a full team wipe in favor of Jupiter. An expensive one, mind you, but they will take it.
That's multiple team fights in a row as well, and Giant should be able to respawn in time to maybe get something done here, but look at the car position. It's basically at the terminus. Giant are going to concede this one.
Recap. Giant, I mean, you'd say they concede, but they also did still sort of try to commit. That resulted in Rod Tongue going down.
It's a forceful concede. It's Jupiter saying, we're just going to cap this one through. We're not going to stop. We're going to continue finding damage, finding kills. And suddenly you look at the time of 5 minutes and 16. We're already on to C. And Giant Lynx need a perfect defense here if they want to win this map.
Twisting the arm behind the back until Giant Lynx say uncle. Jupiter do make that change onto the Reinhardt themselves. And Giant Lynx do actually have a good gamut of ultimates available here. Those two defensive ultimates for Jupiter, though, could be just enough.
The fear that I have for Giant Lynx is we've been here before. We've seen Giant Lynx having the correct ultimates, having the opportunities, but can they really get this? Can they actually win these fights? Bumburapa needs to find something.
Big charge, that grab got eaten.
Finds a
by
matrix.
That is not at all what you wanted to find. That's super punishing. Now Ken Mahororo rotates into his own. The self-destruct just kind of lob forward to see if something sticks as the grab comes out from Ken Mahororo. Immediately they finish off Rocket Panties and all the rest. It's only Saiyajin God who is stuck in spawn, just waiting, cowering like a horror film. He's not going to be able to get back out onto that cart. The cap comes through. Jupiter, a clean and tidy 4-0 to start off their return to Contenders.
That was such a dominant display on that attack as well. Real heavyweight boxes here, bobbing and weaving. You can see the Graviton Surge coming through, the defense matrix straight in front, and then the self-destruct. It's a lot of desperation coming through from Giant Lynx, who are already down in the dumps. And then you just have Jupiter saying, well, those are your two punches. Here comes the knockout, and they complete the map.
Well, there you go. Giant Lynx, that's your one. That's your one free pass. Everything beyond here, they have to step it up a notch. We will not be able to say it's almost there, and maybe they'll do it for this one. There has to come a time where they kick it up, where they actually turn it on, and they show that they do deserve to remain in Contenders. Otherwise, you've got to imagine that these two teams that were formerly relegated will find themselves a single relegated team.
And I think coming into this match, when you see Jupiter on the card and you see also Giant Lynx formed from those two previous time rosters, you do have to say, based on history, Jupiter has to be the team that's favored here. Jupiter has to be the team that is expected to get a 3-map win at a minimum, if not a 4-0. It's really going to look at the other side to think, are they going to be good enough to really push Jupiter to something like a map 5, something like a dropped map in the middle there? Giant Lynx, you got a lot of hope for the team, but hopeful is all they got so far because they don't have the result. On
the other side of that now, Jupiter are going to join the echelon of what I suppose we could consider their current rivals in talent, in that they have completed a full 4-0, and that will leave them tied up at the top of the tables there when all is said and done. Look, it's only the one match, but hey, you'll take it. And it's interesting to say rivals, because this is Jupiter one season removed and slightly altered, and it's Talon with a bit of a lineup change, but at the end of the day, that is still the team that once bested them in Season 2 of 2018, and you can bet your bottom dollar, Jupiter, they want to go to strength until Talon are shaking in their boots prior to their eventual matchup.
Well, this is the kind of season where you have a lot of really high-placing playoffs teams, the likes of Nova MS, who last season was in second place, the likes of Jupiter, who the season before that was themselves in second place, Talon, who with a very different roster had been champions. So a lot to play on the actual history of the teams. But that is match number 3 of this week, done and dusted. We've got one more left to go, and it's Cyclone Coupling coming up against previous season's runner-ups, Nova MS, right after this break.